than in the 40 years they've been among us in any numbers. Some of the images they've imprinted on our minds have been disturbing. Others have been entirely benign. But many of us find Muslims difficult to fathom. I'm going to look at young British Muslims and try and find out how they cope with the clash of cultures.
My name is Jamil. I come from Britain and I am a Muslim.
It wasn't until I started on this report that I realized how little I know about Muslims as a religious community. I tend to bracket them with Hindus and Sikhs, mainly from the Indian subcontinent. This in spite of the fact that their customs and their faith make them so distinctive, almost a people apart. September the 11th threw a very harsh spotlight on Muslims. And in a way I felt myself part of that. I found myself trying not to stare at Muslim women in headscarves on tube trains, wondering what they were thinking and whether or not they were loyal. That's gone. It was a momentary thing. But I do still wonder what it is that makes British Muslims so apart. Is it us or is it them? On Manchester's Curry Mile, a street party marks the festival of Eid at the end of Ramadan, the Muslim month of prayer and fasting. It's a magnet for young Muslims from towns as far away as London. On the face of it, a good-natured scene, though with an undertone of defiance of authority. Tonight, they seem to be saying, we're being Muslims, flying our flag in our space.
It's a young generation thing, to be truthful. If you look around, there's not many families out. To be walking in this amount of crowd with your younger children is a bit intimidating, it's a bit scary. There's no fear, there's no trouble. There is minimum amount of trouble. You'd expect a lot more from your local derby versus Manchester United versus City.
Now tell me about this while we're here. This van. This is going down all evening.
This police van will be here, and all the police will be, the presence of them will be here all night until it's quietened right down. It's got camera what revolves 360 degrees.
So the Manchester police are filming everybody here. It's a kind of mass mugshot, presumably for use in case anybody tries to repeat the riots last summer in Oldham, Bradford and Burnley. The crowd is perfectly well behaved, and the police, in spite of this rather daunting show of strength, are quite relaxed. Though I do think riding their horses along the pavement was a bit over the top. This is Oldham, 8 miles to the north. If Oldham is truly the most segregated town in England, the district of Glodwick is Little Pakistan. Early that morning, at 7 a.m., I was having tea and samosas with the elders of the Al-Madinah Mosque and their Imam, Mohammed Chisti. He's 25, one of the youngest imams in Europe.
Yeah, I went to university here. Yeah.
Like a majority of older nations, Chisti's parents came to Britain from the Pakistani part of Kashmir. He was born and educated here before taking a postgraduate degree in Islamic studies in Cairo. I'd wanted to meet a mullah. The Home Office, worried about the number of non-English speaking and possibly subversive clerics it has admitted into Britain, now wants homegrown imams to replace them. The Home Secretary, David Blunkett, has suggested that divinity students might do. That seems a bit simple. Becoming a mullah takes years of study, rather like becoming a doctor. In his sermon, Sheikh Chisti spoke about Islam's affinity with Christianity.
Muslims and Christians share many similar beliefs, values, moral injunctions, and principles of behavior as well as good conduct. The major difference between the two faiths concerns the nature and role of Jesus.
But as I understand Islam, it is a faith, a culture, and a set of rules by which to live. What I'm trying to find out is whether or not this singularly all-encompassing religion can easily coexist with our own much more indulgent way of life.
The Holy Quran states,
Do you have any problems about loyalty? You're a Muslim. You're very much a Muslim. You're a very devout Muslim. You're also British. Is there a difficulty being both for you?
I think the first thing that comes to me is being a Muslim. Wherever you go in the world, you will still be a Muslim deep inside. You will feel that you are a Muslim. You're born as a Muslim. And I think my studies have a very great effect on me. What I have studied has a very great effect on me. Before I do anything, before I even think of something, I firstly think, what does Islam say about this? So I think being a Muslim is very important. I understand that I'm British as well. I would like to spend the rest of my life in Britain, and what I am doing is just to strive in the way of Islam and spread Islam how it's supposed to be portrayed to the youngsters.
We also talked about his reaction to the atrocity in America on September the 11th.
It shook me because whatever, as I said before, whatever I'd say, I'd think I'd go abiding the Islamic law. What the Holy Quran says about this, the Quran says that if a single person kills another person, it's like he's killed the whole of humanity.
And did it do harm to community relations here in September?
It has done a lot, because personally speaking, I have been looked at, because I walk around or go around in the car with a turban in hand, and people have said, he's such and such, he's one of them. I've had people calling me, he looks like Osama bin Laden. I've had all sorts of people saying all sorts of things to me. Really, really cruel things. But I'm the kind of person who would accept all this and still strive in the way of Islam and tell them that this is not Islam to get planes and just crash them into buildings. Islam is that you call people with hikmah, with wisdom, and with a very nice way of approach to people.
Eid is the principal religious holiday in the Muslim calendar. And after prayers, it's a day for meeting friends and having meals together. Most of these lads have come straight here from the Al Medina Mosque. Now they can let off steam. The rest of the day is theirs. And what they call the square, no more than a car park facing some shops, becomes their equivalent of Trafalgar Square on New Year's Eve. That was a firework. In the riots 10 months ago, Oldham's young Muslims were guarding their territory against a threatened incursion by the BNP. It was the police who got the worst of it. Keeping the two sides apart cost them 86 casualties. This is what the cameras caught: mob violence and fires, just as they did years ago in Toxteth and Brixton. Isn't it curious, or is it, how it invariably takes scenes like this before governments set up inquiries into the state of our inner cities? In Oldham's case, two far-reaching reports on the deeper causes blame poverty, official neglect and severe unemployment, all dating back a generation. Last year, a far-reaching report on segregation in Oldham was written by David Ritchie. You're actually very tough on the council in your report. On employment, for example?
Yes. 2.6% of the workforce in the council, on their own figures, is from the ethnic minorities, and that compares with a 13% figure in the population. It's an appalling figure in my view, and they've known about it for many years and they should have done something about it.
Doing nothing about it, that goes to the heart of the matter. Oldham is one of life's victims. But it wasn't always that. Once, Oldham was the cotton capital of the world. In the early 1900s, it was a boom town with more than 300 cotton spinning mills. But by the 1960s, the industry was in decline. In an abortive attempt to compete with factories abroad that employed cheaper labor, the mill owners introduced night shifts and imported Asian immigrants to man them. But one by one, the mills closed down, and by the 80s, the cotton industry had collapsed. A man who remembers the better days of the 70s is Abdul Aziz.
So what was it like in those days when you came here first?
Well,
30 years ago, was it?
Yeah, 30 years. I came in 1971 when I came in Oldham. And all this area used to be full of cotton mills.
Yeah.
I started in that mill. We were really appreciated that we can get jobs, you know. I mean, there was plenty of jobs going on. You can leave one mill even same day if you don't like it, and you go in different mill, you can find a job there if it may be a little bit easier. There was a lot of work around here at that time.
What might have saved Oldham was massive investment. It never came, possibly because these middle-sized northern towns lacked political clout in faraway London. Most of the old mills have been pulled down, and those that have survived are skeletons. It seems a waste to find old buildings rotting away in a town desperate for decent housing. In what used to be the Dawn Mill, part of the ground floor has become a retail outlet. Here, where spinning machines once made the whole building shake with productivity, are only clothes on hangers, woolen and cotton goods from faraway places overseas.
Made in Indonesia. Yeah, nice. The people.
Abdul told me he remembers when the Dawn Mill employed at least 1,000 workers in 3 shifts, 24 hours a day. "30 years ago in Oldham, living apart was not an issue. Like Abdul Aziz, these men once had English friends. They were their workmates.
We were accepted, you know, it was like a massive, one big family working together. And there was no racism or anything at that time in the mill workplace itself.
Yeah,
and I'm sure if we work together now,
yeah.
Asians get a chance to work in the places where most of the English people are working.
Yeah.
I am sure within a few years, you will see a different atmosphere in Oldham.
Yeah.
People will be socializing with each other,
Yeah.
and that will make integration easier.
I was talking to a young lad the other day, a 17-year-old. He's gone through the normal schooling system, the secondary school.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked him specific questions about his classroom in a junior school, in a secondary school. And I was actually amazed to find out that he's not had a single white, if I'm allowed to use that term, classmate. You know, he's gone through the schooling system up to the age of 16 without having to even mix with a person who's not of a similar race.
Atiku Rahman is a lecturer in mathematics at Oldham College of Further Education. The college is one of the few places in Oldham where the races mix. A quarter of its full-time students are Muslims. These sons and grandsons of the first wave of Asian immigrants to Oldham were born in Britain. What struck me was how much they want to be part of British society, if only it would let them.
We went to primary school together, which was mainly, well, I would say 95% Asian Muslims.
If you look at the houses, they like situated with Asians one area, the white people in one area, you know, separated. So where the Asian would have each community has its own school. So for example, there's a school next to you. You would go rather there than instead of go to a white school.
Now, what about this college of yours? This is the sixth form college.
Sixth form college.
Yeah. And you're all there, and it's mixed.
It is mixed totally.
It's fairly mixed.
We get along with white children get along with us. There's no problems whatsoever. 10 years that it's been open, there have not been any problems at all.
The college is a really good example in Oldham of how
to integrate.
And Asian people have integrated.
You've got white friends, you've got white colleagues, you're studying together. But your parents aren't, are they?
It's mainly a lack of communication. You know, our parents, they don't know that English that well anyway, the subject. So they can't, you know, communicate with English people like we can. So we can understand each other better.
So that's why I think the younger generation are integrating better than the older generation. But I would say, as we grow older, I think our children eventually would integrate completely. And as we're doing today, eventually we got a job, we will be associating ourselves with white people.
You don't have to tell these youngsters of the importance of speaking English. But David Blunkett claims that by speaking Urdu and Bengali to their aging parents and grandparents, they're setting back their own integration.
The houses you see here are over 100 years old.
I walked around Glodwick with the Labour MP for this part of Oldham, Phil Wallace. He's also a government whip. Talking of unemployment in the town, he told me that among young Muslims, it is 3 or 4 times higher than among young whites. And that brought us to language.
2 lots of problems. One is the skill shortage, and secondly is a problem with English language. Many of the people who live in Glodwick have very good English, but many don't.
But the kids all do. The kids who are born
English,
here
the kids speak English. Yeah, they speak English at school. They often use Urdu as the first language at home in order to speak to
Now, this is
grandparents.
interesting, because David Blunkett mentioned this, and I think caused a lot of offence here, suggesting that it was a disadvantage to the community and society generally if these kids spoke Urdu to their non-English speaking grandmothers. Now, that's surely unreasonable.
Well, in terms of trying to get people jobs,
But it doesn't matter.
important to,
But if I'm
speak
employing
English.
somebody, Phil, I'm not interested in what his mother speaks. I'm interested in what he speaks and what his knowledge
yeah,
is.
sure, and the youngsters tend to be doing better at college as many Asians at it. What causes the problem is twofold. One is the self-identity and confidence of the youngsters themselves, who often feel torn. They don't know whether they're Pakistani or British. Second problem, and this is really the nub of it, there is a tremendous suspicion from the indigenous white population who perceive that there is a failure by the Asians to integrate and to become more British.
And that, according to Mr. Wallace, reflecting government policy, is a problem we have to address. But do we? Are we really to tell young British Muslims that speaking Urdu to a grandparent somehow makes them less British? What if the grandparent were French? Would we mind that? What has grown up in the Muslim community in the past 30 years is a generation gap between the original migrants and their British-born offspring. Why object to young Muslims trying to bridge that gap while it still exists? It's not going to last forever. A more pertinent issue is how to promote integration in schools. I've been looking at schools that cater exclusively to children of a particular religion, the so-called faith schools. There have been hundreds of Christian and Jewish faith schools in Britain for years, but when the Muslim community demanded government support for faith schools of their own, they came to be seen as an obstacle to integration. Leicester Islamic Academy is one of about 80 Muslim faith schools in Britain. It is privately funded and takes about 400 children from aged 5 to 16. The school has never before admitted cameras. Before our visit, the governors consulted the parents, some of whom asked that the older 14 or 15-year-old girls be veiled.
Hobson's demise came about because of alcohol. The more his problems became severe, the more he drank alcohol, the more...
It's the first time they've been veiled in class.
...into a cycle that
It
he
also
couldn't
comes in
control.
with the theme of being in control. He wants so much to be in control, yet he can't control himself here because he's an alcoholic.
Later on...
In line with the national curriculum, the girls are discussing a set text, Hobson's Choice.
You think of Hobson being as a big fat man, and then there he is feeling all sorry for himself, you know. It's just, it doesn't fit.
They were intrigued by the play, especially the bits about drinking and marriage.
How would you get that across in a play, do you think?
Miranda Griffith is one of 2 non-Muslim teachers here.
I was asked to teach here just for a short time to cover a maternity leave. I liked it so much, I decided, you know, I'd like to stay on.
What did you like about it?
Well, obviously the students, and just generally the atmosphere of the school and the staff.
He says that he's alcoholic because of his daughters, because of their problems, he's suffering now, but in reality that's not true.
I think because it's a small school, it's very friendly, generally, the staff are very, very friendly, and it's just a really nice atmosphere.
Many local authorities in Britain and the authors of the 2 reports on segregation have misgivings about faith schools, calling them divisive. The school's principal, Dr. Mohammed Muqaddam, resents and refutes that assertion.
Well, I disagree with the whole report because simply it has left out very important pieces of evidence. For example, an overwhelming majority of the Jewish children go to faith schools and have been going for many, many years, yet we find them integrating very successfully at the different levels of British society. So are they suggesting that some faith communities are capable of doing and others are not? Well, I find that very objectionable. If you look at faith schools across the country, certainly Muslim schools are promoting attitudes, the way to understand different cultures and to live in a harmonious way.
Did any of the committee members who helped to write these reports that have been rather harsh about faith schools actually come here and look at your school, for example?
We haven't had a single person either come or speak to me or any other member of staff or by telephone or written correspondence. We've had absolutely no contact at all. So I'm a bit surprised to hear that they've criticized faith schools, yet they've failed to get in touch with perhaps one of the biggest and most successful Muslim faith schools.
The government talks about more inclusiveness in the faith schools and suggests even that 25% of the intake of faith schools should take children from other faiths.
In fact, we're well ahead of that. Our policy is very clear that we will allow any child to come into this school, whether it's a Sikh child, a Christian child, a Jewish child. Our school is open to any child if their parents so wish it.
The reason I went to Leicester was because experts in these questions call it a shining example of good race relations. And largely this seems to be due to years of hard work building links between the communities, but also to the fact that Leicester's first wave of Asian immigrants were used to British ways. They came from our former possessions in Africa, like Uganda, where many had run small businesses, but it still took them time to get accepted. I reported from Leicester some 20 years ago, and from those days I remember some issues that Leicester stopped fussing about. Muslim women who didn't speak English, and small children going to after-school classes to learn the Quran. 6 months ago, a new word burst into the language, madrasa. It simply means school, not as some people seem to think, terrorist training camps. At this one in Leicester, teenagers who go to mixed secondary schools during the day are attending a 2-hour evening class.
As you will appreciate,
the teacher is Sheikh Ibrahim Mogra.
Unlike now, where every person next to you is a Muslim, there might have been somebody...
He came to Britain from Malawi 17 years ago. He's now 36. He stresses that his madrasa is independent of the mosque,
We reject the teaching
and tailored to the needs of British Muslim children.
other faiths that you come across.
For our benefit, he asked the boys whether they'd met with any hostility after September the 11th.
In school, people like call me names, calling me a Taliban or a terrorist, but they don't really mean it, because afterwards it was just for a short while, and after that we're all just together, we're playing with each other.
And now you're friends again.
So if you take the diplomatic approach, at least you can make them understand what your faith really is, and back it up with quotes from the Quran saying what Islam is all about and what a peaceful religion it is.
What you're saying is we need to educate our friends, especially the white community, that, like it or not, we are part and parcel of British society, and you can see the contribution that we are making to British society. You cannot compare us to a handful of people who've done something terrible in America. We are totally different. We hold different views. We don't believe in violence. We want to live with each other in peace.
In the past half year, Leicester's record of good race relations has twice been put to the test. The first test followed September the 11th. Canon Andrew Wingate is the Church of England's member of the Leicester Interfaith Committee. How important is it here in Leicester, this interfaith community you have, where you meet and so on? Does it really make a difference?
When there's an issue, for example, September the 11th, we can come together, and in fact we met every week, looking at the effect at the grassroots level, met with the police, met with representatives of the council, and with leaders such as Ibrahim and myself and our bishop. That's the kind of emergency thing, firefighting.
Yeah.
But you can't do that if you don't already know each other.
BBC Radio Leicester News headlines at 1:30. This is Anna Holford. Police investigating terrorist offences have arrested 8 people in Leicester.
Then in January, the news broke that Leicester might be harbouring a terrorist cell.
They're believed to be in the Highfields and Northfields areas of the city. 3 other men have also been...
By the time the raids were over, 17 men had been taken away for questioning. Nearly all were quickly released without charge. The rest may face charges of fraud or offences against immigration laws. What prompted the raids has not been explained, though some suspect faulty intelligence from the FBI. But the episode did alarm Muslim leaders, who arranged a meeting with senior police officers and received an assurance that their community was not suspected of terrorist connections.
We've cleared the air, and that's enabled us to go to our community and reassure them that things are under control, there's no cause for alarm, and the peace and harmony is being maintained, and the police is not targeting the Muslim community in any way in particular.
What Leicester has done is find a way of capping threats to good race relations before they become critical. But what about the less dramatic but more enduring irritants, like the cultural divide? Specifically, what many people in Britain regard as the second-class status of overprotected Muslim women.
We believe that our young girls and young ladies need to be protected and must be protected, simply because you cannot deny the corruption that the wider society has now within its midst.
Andrew, you know the community well. What do you think about the woman question?
I think Christians find it difficult to differentiate between being Muslim and being a Muslim woman who's oppressed.
Yeah.
And I find that any group that I take to meet Ibrahim will ask always a question about the girls from a fairly young age, from puberty onwards, wearing the full veil. I think not the scarf, but the full veil.
Yeah.
And I think it must be a Muslim explains or justifies why this is the case.
Well, what do you say to that?
I think one needs to understand, many times the perception is that these young ladies or these women are forced by the males to don this.
That's right.
But what one really, when you look into it, you find that a lot of these, a majority of these women are actually doing it voluntarily.
That much is true. I've been hearing much the same from highly educated young Muslim women who deny that their faith and customs are social and professional handicaps. At a Bangladeshi restaurant in Leicester, I joined a group of medical and law students and found them, as far as I could tell, living and working happily enough between the two often contrasting cultures.
My mother's English.
Yeah.
My father's from Sudan.
Yeah.
So I've always had the multicultural kind of dual heritage upbringing.
Yeah.
So because I dress as a Muslim, I wear a scarf, I'm perceived as unwesternized or a foreigner, but I'm actually English.
You're perceived to be foreign because you wear a headscarf.
I believe so.
I found a lot of the patients actually wanted to ask you more about Islam, so you'd come up to them because they knew you were Muslims, quite obviously, and so if you'll be taking history from them or just talking to them, and then just towards the end of it they'll be like, oh, so do you have to keep wearing the scarf all the time, and why do you wear it? And it was good because it meant more interaction, and it meant that
you don't mind people asking you about the scarf?
No,
you don't.
No, it's
quite nice.
It's good. I mean, exactly. It helps them understand why we do it.
I think people are shy,
Yeah.
I don't think I would ever have had the courage to go up to a Muslim woman I didn't know and say, why are you wearing that scarf? I think I'd be afraid that she'd say, it's none of your damn business.
No, if you say it nicely.
It depends how you say it, exactly.
How it's asked.
Personally, I find the beauty of being me, born in Yemen, came here when I was young. The beauty of it is being able to be in Britain and associate myself having, English friends. Being able then to go to Yemen, fair enough, like you say, it's a bit of a joke almost, don't speak the language properly, my pronunciation, but it's nice, you're still accepted. I'm accepted here, and that's, part of, that's what's nice about it, if you look at it in a nice way. I like it.
Are there Muslim states you wouldn't want to live in?
Yeah, but I don't think that's because of Islam. I think that's because of the Muslim states. And they are harsh, and you probably do get more freedom of speech in this country and freedom to practice a religion. It's true. But that's not Islam. That's because they're going against it, if anything, I feel.
There's no real Islamic state at the moment, is there really? Any of these Muslim countries. There's no real Islamic ruler who's implementing Islam in the true manner that it should be.
Meeting these soon-to-be doctors and lawyers, it struck me how well they seemed to be handling their Britishness and Muslimness. No sign of an identity crisis here. But surely there are limits to cultural integration, and if so, where do the cultures clash? And how do young Muslims cope when they're confronted with alcohol, expressly forbidden, and the temptations of premarital sex and drugs? In London and Manchester, I've been clubbing, looking for young British Muslims at play. Murtaza Ali presents his program Sorted on ZTV.
My name's Mutz, and welcome to another edition of the most cracking show on TV.
It's a network with a big audience in Britain's Asian community. Once a week, Mutz and his cameraman broadcast from the clubbing scene.
Guys are just in denial. They want to be a woman.
He's personable and articulate, and watching him perform, I thought I had found a typical modern young Muslim thoroughly in tune with our teenage society.
Every weekend, mate. Every weekend. At the door.
But few of the Asians here were Muslims, and even Mutz turned out to have doubts.
Do you have any difficulty at all reconciling your religion with British society and all the influences around you?
Yeah, definitely. I'd
You
say
do?
so.
You
Yeah,
do?
yeah.
You do? What sort of
I
difference?
mean, for example, when we film the program, I have a major cloud over my head thinking, my God, this is so bad. You're a Muslim. You shouldn't be going to clubs. You shouldn't be doing X, Y, and Z.
Do you?
Yeah, I do, definitely. I get emails from kids aged from the age of 10 up till 16, 17. And they're saying, oh, we love the program. It's so funny. It's so funny. And I think to myself, my God, am I polluting these kids' minds by promoting such a bad thing?
Is it a bad thing?
It depends upon your own interpretation of it. I mean, at the end of the day, I could be considered a hypocrite by a lot of people because they say, oh, well, you shouldn't go clubbing, you shouldn't do X, you shouldn't do Y, you shouldn't do Z. But I suppose it's up to your own. It's your own decision at the end of the day.
Now it's really kicking. It's really live.
There's nothing in the Quran that suggests you shouldn't go clubbing.
Well, it says you shouldn't really interact with women and whatnot, and indulge in such delights that may consequently lead to other things.
Yes.
You know, I mean, for example, some people when they go clubbing, they may get a bit drunk, whatever. Consequently, they may have a fight or something, and that isn't encouraged in Islam at all.
No, you don't drink.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's one reason. But again, if you do go clubbing, or your friends do go clubbing, or you do go to bars, you might think, hey, maybe half a pint isn't so bad. But personally, I mean, the way I've been brought up, I haven't never had the urge to even have a little sip.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh, drink, oh, alcohol.
What a disturbing thing our rapidly changing culture must seem to the older, more conservative generation of Muslims, whose culture is much stricter than ours about alcohol, premarital sex and drugs. Tahir and Irfan are both Muslims.
But are they very happy about your meeting girls in a place like this?
No. They don't actually mind it, but they do get kind of irritated if it goes too far. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, my parents would like me to get married to a Pakistani Muslim girl.
No wonder so many Muslim parents try to insulate their children from modernism by arranging marriages with boys and girls from back home.
Would you prefer to marry a Pakistani girl, as you put it, who's been born in Britain like you?
She may not have been born in Britain.
Would you go back to Pakistan if I...
Yeah, actually, that's one thing. My brothers, they went back to Pakistan and got married. But I've actually spoken to my mom, and I've now come to an agreement that if I find a Pakistani girl here and I like her a lot, and the parents of the girl don't mind, then there's no problem.
My parents are a little bit less liberal than that. Well, they've got the idea. Well, my mum's got the idea that I'm definitely going back to Pakistan.
To find a wife?
Basically, yeah.
There is a huge difference in background.
Yes.
There's going to be.
But
I mean, isn't that going to be a problem for you?
No. For me, she doesn't have to be a brain surgeon, right? With me, I'm a man, yeah. For me,
you want a wife who'll be in the kitchen, look after the children?
Not really. I want to be the main breadwinner, yeah? I'm proud, I'm a man, you know what I mean? I can't see myself sitting at home, my wife making the money. It's not going to happen with me. So basically, my wife, yeah, she'll be at home, she'll be cooking, she'll be cleaning, she'll be looking after the children. In Pakistani culture, that's how it is. I mean, as long as she can cook, clean,
that's all you want?
I wouldn't want that. I'm a different person to him. I'd prefer my wife to have GCSEs, have A-levels.
She's come from Pakistan, yeah.
Yeah, but there are people in Pakistan nowadays, because Pakistan is, like you said, it's a developing country. And there are girls who are actually learning, doing their GCSEs, doing their A-levels, and then they're getting married. I'll admit, I would like to go from a wealthier family, which is educated, which is well brought up. I wouldn't want to go to a village, see a girl there, she can't speak English, because I would like to have an intellectual conversation with my wife in English.
A massive setback for the reputation of Muslims was, of course, September the 11th and the war in Afghanistan. Many British Muslims found themselves being unfairly suspected of disloyalty to Britain.
1, 2, 3, 4! 1, 2, 3, 4!
And at an anti-war demonstration in London, some Muslims brought suspicion upon themselves with their public support of the Taliban. In fact, Muslims were heavily outnumbered by the rest of the crowd. But they were trying to stand out, just like the controversial mullah from Acton, Abu Qatada, who led them in prayers.
Afghanistan, but it is equally against the invidious foreign policy of the new Labour government.
Soon after that demonstration, I went to Stratford to meet a young Muslim businessman who'd set up a small radio station covering part of East London.
You're listening to Ramadan Radio 87.7.
He invited me to take part in a phone-in. It gave me a chance to listen to a cross-section of Muslim opinion about the impact of September the 11th.
I am a Muslim. I am a Muslim. You're listening.
A call from a listener brought up the question of divided loyalties.
Assalamu alaikum, listeners. You're listening to Ramadan Radio on 87.7 FM, and this is the Current Affairs Show. Let's take a caller online. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. The recent demonstrations regarding Afghanistan, we had over 100,000 people. Now, more than 80% of them were British-born non-Muslims. How about their loyalty? Is it to Britain or not?
Okay, let's put that. Let's take that as a point. I mean, Charles, what do you think?
Let me ask you.
Yeah.
If there is that conflict, what are you going to do about it?
I think that, for myself, if it was the case that there was this conflict of some sort between, let's say, an Islamic power and the British power, and if I felt that I have to, my allegiance, I must defend, that Islamic power, then I would give up my passport. I would terminate the contract.
So you'd stop being British?
I would stop being British.
No, I think Muslims must join the army. We've joined all the other professions. There's nothing to hold you back from joining the army as well. And remember, if it came to fighting another country, even if it was a Muslim country, the loyalty shouldn't be just because that country is Muslim and we're fighting a Muslim country. It should be on right and wrong. So if that country has done wrong, then we should be fully prepared to fight against it. That is the issue, and that is actually a Quranic point. That provided it is wrong, if that country has done wrong, then you must fight against it.
Who makes the decision about what's right or wrong?
That is your own, has to
That's
be your
own
conscience in the end.
So if you were advising a young British soldier in the Marines, say, who is now in Afghanistan, and he said to you, what do I do as a good Muslim?
If he believes the Taliban were wrong not to have handed over Osama bin Laden, if he believes the Taliban, it is right to bomb the Taliban, then by all means go ahead. If he's happy, if his conscience is happy with that, then go ahead.
We got a caller online. Right, Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Right, brother, what do you think?
There is a split between the Muslims and the British state, and it's widening, being a minority.
Another telephone call, this one calling British society hypocritical, led us to this. Do devout Muslims feel comfortable here, or should they go elsewhere?
Okay, Jazakallah khair, brother. Thank you very much. Now, many Muslims would say that, look, this is an evil country. There is an evil focus to it. And therefore, why should we try to treat it as if it is a Christian country and therefore stay here?
But it doesn't call itself a Christian country. It's a secular country.
This is not an evil state. In fact, this state is far better than many Muslim countries. So it's unacceptable, that language. This country allows equal opportunity to everyone. It's far better than many Muslim countries, and that is why we don't see a huge number of British Muslims emigrating from the UK to go to live in Muslim countries. That's actually the reverse. Many people from Muslim countries would give their right arms to come and move to the UK or to the United States. So let's give it its due.
It's a very
very lucky.
We're very, very fortunate. I think anyone who sort of says they're not fortunate to be in the West in terms of having religious freedom, the right to run this radio station. I wouldn't be able to do this in Syria, in Egypt. I
could do it in Pakistan.
I'd be lucky to do it in Pakistan.
My dad has let me out for the night, so I'm not going to stay here long. He's picking me up at 10:30. He thinks this is a library.
What occurs to me is that many, if not most, British-born Muslims would find in the land of their fathers and mothers a way of life that has fallen too far behind the times to be acceptable. None more so than Shazia Mirza.
Are there any Muslims in here tonight? No? Good. All the women were dressed in black.
Shazia has made her name as a stand-up comedian by trading on her Muslim identity.
It's been hard for me, being a Muslim woman, being born in Britain, and at the same time my parents are from Pakistan. They came over in the 60s and brought their entire culture and religion with them. So on one hand, I have to live the Islamic way of life, and on the other hand, I've got English friends that go out every night getting drunk, but they're still my friends. It's against my religion to drink alcohol. My English friends always seem to have such a great time when they go out. They get drunk, then wake up in the morning and say, I had a brilliant time last night. I can't remember what happened. Where did we go again? Who is the father of my child? I want to be drunk. I want to cry, fall over and roll down the street. Looks like so much fun. I want to walk in diagonals in the middle of a dual carriageway singing I Will Survive. I hope that, you know, it will also break down the perceptions that the British public have of Islam and of Muslims. You know, the last thing you expect to find in a comedy club is a practicing Muslim woman standing on stage making jokes to rowdy drunken men like I was tonight. People say to me, why did your mother walk 5 steps behind your father? He looks better from behind. In the long run, somebody will benefit from what I'm doing. You know, somebody somewhere will be liberated. Maybe some Muslim woman will see me doing stand-up comedy and think, God, if she can do that, then I can go and get a job in the office. Then I can go and do what I want to do.
So are there any conclusions to be drawn from this exercise of mine? I liked all those young Muslims I've been meeting, and I think they deserve from us more understanding than they're getting. Their religion is exceptionally demanding. It lays down beliefs, a set of values, and a whole way of life that isn't easy to reconcile with our modern society. It isn't easy to be a good Muslim and be more British. And I think their parents need to show them more understanding too. The parents who brought them here, gave birth to them here, and who know how difficult it is to reconcile these conflicting loyalties, these two pulls in opposite directions. I think the young Muslims need space. Space to adjust to British society. Space to withdraw a bit from those family loyalties. Space to find their own way.